Oh, but it's not.
How many seconds?
It's 12 o'clock right now.
We can start.
Oh, we can start now?
All right.
Uhuru. We want to welcome everybody who's on this live stream today. We're very excited about launching our $25,000 fundraiser for the Black Power Blueprint, specifically for the Uhuru House that is being built in St. Louis right now by the African People's Education and Defense Fund and Black Star Industries. And to say that the Black Power Blueprint is a self-determination program for economic and political power in the hands of the African community of St. Louis. And it ultimately will be bigger than that, but we're talking about projects in St. Louis right now. It is sponsored by the Black Star Industries and the African People's Education and Defense Fund, as I said. And today, we are launching our youcaring.com/Black Power Blueprint. We are launching our campaign to raise $25,000 on crowdsourcing on the YouCaring site between now and the end of February. This is something that we're going to do because this project is something that everybody can support. It's very dynamic. It is the only project like it going on inside the United States right now. So we're going to ask during this program for everybody to go to youcaring, youcaring.com/Black Power Blueprint, and you will come up to the donations page. What we want to raise today is $3,000. Now, we're going to go live 3 times today. First time is now, of course, where we have Chairman Omali Yeshitela, which we're very, very honored to have with us today. And we also have our comrade from the African People's Solidarity Committee, Jackson Hollingsworth. I'm Penny Hess, chair of the African People's Solidarity Committee, the organization of white people under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party. And, excuse me, we all have this little bug that's going around, so we're going to do the best we can. Excuse me. So we want to ask everybody to be able to go to the YouCaring site, to be able to, excuse me, Jackson?
Yes. Take over. Certainly. Whereas Chairwoman Penny of the African People's Solidarity Committee said, I'm Jackson Hollingsworth of the African People's Solidarity Committee as well, and Peru Solidarity Movement, and the representative of the Black Power Blueprint Reparations Campaign, here with Omali Yeshitela, the chairman of the African People's Socialist Party. And so, as Chairwoman Penny was saying, today we are launching a YouCaring, youcaring.com/Black Power Blueprint, with the goal to raise $25,000 total for the Uhuru House Community Center being built in St. Louis, Missouri, where Michael Brown was terribly murdered by Darren Wilson, and where the Black community is under attack daily from forced impoverishment, gentrification, of course, police violence, and so many other forms of oppression, of colonialism. And so I am here with the chairman of the African People's Socialist Party.
And I just want to say one thing before that, Uhuru. So I just want to say before we go on to our incredible interview with Chairman Omali Yeshitela of the African People's Socialist Party, leader of the Uhuru movement, and leader of these projects that are going on, that we're asking everybody to donate today, whatever you can. We want to raise, as we said, $3,000 throughout the day. Also later at 4 o'clock this afternoon Eastern, we will be broadcasting from St. Louis, where we will have T'Challa of the African People's Socialist Party, KC and Kitty from the African People's Solidarity Committee. And at 7 o'clock tonight Eastern, we will again be here. We'll be on B Live, and we will have the honor of interviewing Secretary General of the African People's Socialist Party, Gazi Koto, and President of the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement, Kalumbai Antoinette. So it's going to be a very dynamic day where we are launching these campaigns and talking about them and getting everybody excited about it. And as we said, everybody can donate whatever you can, whatever you're able to give. But in particular, I'm speaking to white people, to North American people today, to give reparations. And we're asking the white community to give $100 today if you can do that. Understanding that we live in a system built on the enslavement of African people and the theft of the land of the indigenous people and colonialism around the world, which has created a pedestal upon which all of us sit. And as the chairman has said, every dream and aspiration that we have comes from this reality that we sit on the pedestal, that everything we have comes at the expense of African, indigenous, and oppressed people here and around the world. So we're calling for white people to pay reparations, to recognize that this is a parasitic capitalist system, that every single day it is stealing more resources, more land, more of the genius and arts and understandings and labor of African people, and that we need to reverse that flow by going into the heart of the white society and turning back over to the African Revolution and the Black Power movement the resources that have been stolen for our benefit. This is the reparations that we're talking about today. So we're asking everybody in the white community to put in $100 today at the youcaring.com/Black Power. So it is my honor to be able to speak with Chairman Omali Yeshitela, who has been the leader of the African Revolution since 1970s, and it started as a leader of this movement in the 1960s with JOMO, Junta of Militant Organizations, founding the African People's Socialist Party in 1972 and the African People's Solidarity Committee in 1976. So, Chairman Uhuru, welcome. Thank you very much for coming on to this Black Power movement live streaming today.
Uhuru, thank you very much for having me. I'm really glad to be here. I had an extra smile on my face because I just saw one of the wayward young comrades walk into the room, and that was quite pleasing to see. But thank you. I'm really glad that we're doing this, and that I'm convinced that we can raise the $3,000 that we're talking about on today. And I think that the call for at least $100 per person is a good call, and I think that there are people who are prepared to make that kind of contribution. It's an extraordinary cause that we're involved in. There's nothing like what we're doing in St. Louis, in particular with the Black Power Blueprint. There's nothing like that has ever happened in this country or in the world. And I think that not only is it a good thing for people to contribute to it, because it is a campaign that will help to change things fundamentally, but also it's historic. And for people to get in on the ground floor of this historic event, I think is really important too. It's something that people will remember forever.
Uhuru. Thank you, Chairman. And I did want to announce, Chairman, that we do, in our goal for $3,000 today, we do have a comrade who has put up $1,000 in matching funds. So, and that is from our comrade Ruby Gibbleson, a member of the African People's Solidarity Committee in Philadelphia. We really appreciate that stand. So once we raise $1,000 today, she will match it with another $1,000. So we're already a third to our goal. And actually, before we started this, we had gotten $100 from Anonymous. We want to thank Anonymous for another $100. And our comrade Ann Hirsch, who is a midwife here in St. Petersburg and a really powerful supporter and member of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement that we appreciate so much. We also got $15 in from Jamie Wilson in San Diego. We want to thank Jamie for that. And I am going to put in $100 today. So that is something I want to ask everybody, on here to match, to be able to put in as well, or again, anything that we can. So, Chairman, thank you. And I wanted to ask you about this question of dual and contending power in the hands of the African working class. Why is this so important? And in the whole trajectory towards the liberation of African people. And how is it different than what anybody else is doing?
I think it's an important question. We formulated the idea of the struggle for dual power. I think it was in the late 70s before when we first advanced this question in terms of a strategy for liberation. How do we win freedom? And people have seen movies and have these romantic visions of the storming of the Bastille, of cordite and gunfire and all of those things, which may or may not accompany a revolution, but people think of revolution as something that happens suddenly, and they most often do not think of revolution as a process. In fact, it's one of the problems that we often have, especially with young people who enter into the political fray, and with this assumption that revolution is this event, is something that happens quickly, when actually revolution is a process, and it's something that we developed a strategy for within the African People's Socialist Party many years ago. And we recognize that revolution is about the actual transfer of political power, that one has to, some people like to talk about revolution as change, but revolution is more than just change. Revolution is about a transfer of political power, that the oppressed have to come to power. If there is no acquisition of political power, then there has been no revolution. I don't care what it's called, there has been no revolution. And that's why Bernie's $15 per hour, perhaps one day, if we pray hard enough, was ridiculous assumption to be making at the same time as talking about revolution. Like most liberals, Bernie could think about some process that was short of revolution, because it was not about a transfer of power. So usually what it's about is improving capitalism, it's improving the social system under which we live. We're not talking about simply improving the system. We're talking about overturning this relationship that we have, which is based on oppression and exploitation. And the reality is that everybody in the world has this relationship with especially U.S. Capitalism, U.S. Imperialism, and even to some extent that is true with white people who live within the United States and other places like that. That's part of what we talk about. We're talking about the oppression of homosexuals and women, and even how workers are treated and human beings are treated, and the environment is destroyed and what have you. This is a consequence of capitalism, and you have people who, like even Al Gore, is talking about fixing the environment, but he wants to try to fix it under capitalism, and capitalism is the problem for the environment. But what we are involved in is a struggle for political power. And we call it dual power, that when we begin to develop a capacity to challenge the colonial powers in this country, the U.S., the ruling class, to challenge them for power. And we say it's a dual and a contending power, not just having some power, but power that contends with the power of the colonial capitalist system that afflicts African people in this country. And in the final analysis, what we've seen is that when people have talked about revolution, even when they've talked about capturing what has been considered black power up until recently, it has not resulted in any kind of meaningful change for the African workers and peasants, who usually are the forces who are responsible for the political action that brings the crisis about, that forces the capitalists or the colonialists come to some kind of bargaining table and negotiate some settlement. What we are talking about is a situation where the workers ourselves, through the office of its advanced attachment, that is to say the working class advanced attachment, which is the African People's Socialist Party, actually engaging in a struggle to capture that political power. And that's why we want to develop the ability for self-determination for the African nation under the leadership of the African working class. What we've seen in the past is where people say they were fighting for the liberation of the African nation, whether that's been a particular country in Africa or someplace else, it has been for the benefit of a narrow social force, that's the African petty bourgeoisie. And it's when it speaks about the nation, when it speaks about the Africans, it speaks from its own interests as a class. It's a very small and selfish class that has no redeeming values as a class. And so we are talking about the African working class that is the basis of all the value that is created coming to power, and coming to power on our own terms, and leading the struggle for the African nation. When we talk about the African nation, we're talking about the liberation for the whole people, but only the African working class can take it all the way. And so in this process of fighting for national liberation, we are engaged in an ongoing struggle for dual power, to capture the ability to feed, clothe, and house ourselves under the leadership of the African working class, its advanced attachment, which is the African People's Socialist Party. And it's a critical strategic development that we are involved in. And the fact of the matter is that when you look at the conditions of Africans, when you look at the conditions of most of the people who are oppressed around the world, what has reduced us to this status is that an effective assault has been made on our capacity for self-determination, for self-rule, self-government, and then for self-reliance. And the struggle, and that in fact is how capitalism came into existence, this whole parasitic relationship that was imposed on the rest of us, where capitalist white power sucks the blood, sucks the resources, sucks the life out of colonized peoples. And what we've been noticing most recently in history is that every time there is meaningful, successful struggle for among the people to take back their resources, take back their lives, their sovereignty, etc., it creates crisis for the social system itself. It's a social system that relies on its ability to continue this parasitic relationship for success. And so now what we have is the African working class, through its advanced attachment, the African People's Socialist Party, engaging in a struggle that's part of a revolutionary struggle to actually contend and contest with the colonial powers for control of our lives. And that is what Black Power Blueprint is all about, the work that we're doing, particularly in St. Louis, but we're doing it in other places, as you know. And yes. So that's, you know, I hope that long meandering response was helpful.
Yeah. That is so exciting to hear, because a couple of things is, one, just to make it clear, and I don't think I did, that not only is the Uhuru House being built in St. Louis right now, but the Uhuru House, the other programs include a GECO kitchen, a beautiful, beautiful building in the African working class neighborhood in St. Louis. for the Uhuru Foods and Pies and Cafe will be located in this building as part of the economic development process, as well as housing, all kinds of buildings for housing of the African working class, as well as encouragement of other people's businesses and housing to be there. So, I just think this is so exciting, and the party has similar kinds of programs in Philadelphia and Oakland. They include furniture programs of the African People's Education and Defense Fund, the Uhuru Foods and Pies in Oakland, California, and here in St. Petersburg, Zenzele, which is a prop consignment, which is a project of the all African people's development and empowerment program in Huntsville, Alabama. And this is what the party is. And I think that you're saying that revolution is a process, and it doesn't just happen overnight. It happens by building. And it happens with the goal of taking power in the hands of the African working class. So that is that there is a time when there is the power of the African working class side by side with the government.
Yes.
With the oppressor government.
I was laughing because as we were talking about the revolution being a process, and contrasting that with how many people think of revolution.
Yes.
I was just reading recently about how, as the Russian Revolution was unfolding in 1917, that the mayor of Petrograd actually sent a delegation to meet with the revolutionaries to find out if the revolution had yet begun. I mean, it was, of course, it was on the eve of the actual capture of political power, but the fact is that this whole shift was going in terms of the power of the revolutionary forces, the working class under its own leadership versus the power that was left in place by the Tsar and the capitalists who, temporarily held power, Kerensky and his crew. So the guy wanted to know, yeah, this is the mayor. So, yeah, is it over? Is it happening yet? And I think that that challenges the whole notion, because what we see all around us is this system is in serious straits. Even as there are people who running around bemoaning the state of the Republican and the Democratic parties, but they're missing the boat. The state of the Republican and Democratic parties, the state is actually evidence of the crisis of the whole damn social system itself. So what they're doing is trying to, they're placing bets on this political capitalist party versus that capitalist party, on the party of Hillary versus the party of Trump, and that's missing the boat altogether. And what they should be placing a bet on is Black Power blueprint and on the rise of the oppressed peoples around the world, and contribute to that process, because as people who understand and appreciate dialectics, we know that you can't place your bets and your hopes and your aspirations on a dying social system, even if at the moment it seems strong. You see all the evidence points to the fact that this thing is in a state of decline. And what you do is you place your hopes and aspirations on that which seems to be growing. And what's growing all around the world is the resistance of oppressed peoples in this country, and not just this country. Of course, the African People's Socialist Party and Uhuru movement, we're located in various other places as well, but the Black Power Blueprint project is just a clear example of growth of the resistance of the oppressed. And I cannot overstate the significance of St. Louis as a base of operation. In St. Louis, we have an incredible African community, historically known for its resistance among other things, cultural and otherwise. And there's work going on all the time in the various communities by community leaders and what have you, and people who are trying to grow economic development, because the community, like every other African community in the world, is constantly under assault, economic and otherwise. And so there's this activity going on all the time, but none of it is under the leadership of the African working class. And most of the great, otherwise great work being done by folk makes the assumption that we shall have to forever labor under the authority of an illegitimate relationship that came through slavery and genocide. This that we're involved in now is something that's in the possession of the African working class that has a far-seeing vision, has a theory that helps us to understand how this whole thing got started, how the African people who come from arguably the richest landmass on the planet Earth find ourselves everywhere in such a state of impoverished existence and oppression, etc. We know the answer to that. And everybody else who's not befuddled by lies that comes from the ruling class and their own ego and arrogance know the answer to this as well. And what we're saying is that people can jump on this train and support this project, and that is a part of participating in the revolutionary process. You can do that by supporting Black Power Blueprint and what it is that we're trying to make happen today. That's the call. And we said that, $100, but, I would not be surprised if somebody gave the entire $3,000, and then,
Absolutely.
I really wouldn't be,
I wouldn't be surprised either, because this is the future for not only for African people, but for all people. An end to white power, an end to a parasitic system, an end to a system built at the expense of everybody else. And this is where we have the opportunity as white people to rectify our relationship to African people and people on the planet Earth, not carrying out the will of this government, which has been responsible for the slaughter, the genocide, the murders, the wars all around the world, but being able to be under the leadership of the African Revolution, which is the leading force against white power in the world today, because it's inside the borders of the United States, of the center of imperialism, as well as uniting African people here and all around the world.
Well, I think that to make sure that people understand, we're not talking about pure abstractions. We look at what this government has just done with the so-called tax plan that was just passed. And it's important to say that because there's this tendency to say, well, Trump did it. Trump, first of all, is the president of the United States. He's the head of the government. And secondly, the Congress just, made this thing happen. And this so-called tax plan, which is shoveling out trillions of dollars to the rich, to the wealthy sector, even of the already well-to-do white population, shoveling out all of this money that, as I've seen, can result in a deficit approximating $1.5 to $3 trillion over the next 10 years. Which is deepening and creating artificially a deep chasm of what do they call it? When deficit, right? And this is not a new strategy, by the way, that creates such a deficit, and then lay upon the people that in order to keep from cutting, to keep the government running. Then with this deficit that they've just purposely deepened, that they have to take monies from welfare, from Social Security, from Medicare, and things like that. And we're approaching a much deeper struggle. And I don't know how many people are observing it in this fashion. That means struggle is going to deepen here inside this country, but also at the same time they're doing that. We have them declaring Jerusalem to be now the capital of the illegitimate state of Israel. We have an escalation of war throughout the Middle East. We have an aggression, a growing aggression, even in Venezuela, where the people of the U.S. has pushed people into desperate straits. So what's we're going to be seeing is that a manifestation of sharper resistance struggle happening all over the world. And this resistance of the oppressed is we're going to approaching a situation where I remember the Chinese used to say during the 1960s that the 1960s was an era where revolution was the main trend in the world, and that's exactly where it seems that we're heading right now. And that's, of course, Black Power Blueprint gives everybody an opportunity to participate in this revolutionary process, so that we can hear the mayor or Trump or somebody sending a message to find out has it started yet or is it over, or something to that effect, right? Mayor of St. Louis. So this is what we're asking people to do, is to make this contribution to Black Power Blueprint because of what it means for overturning this relationship that this country has and this government has and this system has with Africans and oppressed peoples around the world, so that we can rebuild decent relationship between all the peoples. That's what we're asking.
Chairman, I just wanted to let you know that we have raised, we've had reparations from Allison Haney in Philadelphia, $100, and from William Hobson, $10.
Janice, $100.
Janice can't, $100. All right, so we have raised $350 towards our matching fund of $1,000. So we're getting there. We're getting there.
It's now $450.
$450.
Janice was $450.
Okay, so then, great. So with Janice $450, that's right. We're at $450. Thank you, Renee, who's keeping track of all this, and thank you so much to everybody who's given so far today. So we're getting really close. We're almost to half of our goal for this segment, and just keep going to youcaring.com/BlackPowerBlueprint. So, Chairman, I really appreciate this discussion. It's so exciting. And there's a couple of things that I wanted to raise. And one of them is that this whole, one of the things that distinguishes what is happening in St. Louis and everything that the party does is the fact that the party's had a strategy for taking power, for self-government of African people since day one. And the programs in St. Louis are not just economic programs, excuse me, of self-reliance, but they also go together with Black community-controlled police. Demands for Black community-controlled police, Black community-controlled education, and actual political and economic power together. Could you address that?
I think it's really important for us to understand that that when as we say in the party, that politics is simply concentrated economics, and that's true. And the problem is that when we see a political manifestation, in most instances, it is always in the service of white power capitalism. I don't care how radical it appears to be, that's generally where it comes from, or it is in the process of trying to overturn that. And with our projects, the most successful political organizations that's ever been in the African community, the most successful have been the movement by Marcus Garvey, at one time by the former original Nation of Islam. And one of the things that made them so attractive to African people is not the massive demonstrations that they were having, but the fact that they were actually building institutions of self-reliance. The Garvey movements, steamship lines, the industry that it actually created, Black Star factories that it actually created. It owned everything from dry cleaners to recording studios and what have you. This was a fundamental part of the struggle, and this is the thing that made it attractive. And because of that, African people could see the political objectives. You see it because of this. The political objectives are made manifest through these economic institutions for self-reliance, self-determination, self-government. The objective, the political objective, is self-government. How do you know that's where they're going? Is because you see Black Power Blueprint, you see these institutions that's being created so that the people can be self-reliant and self-government. And these become examples of the ability of the people to do that. And actually, in many ways, what we are asking for is that for North Americans and others who believe in this too, to unite with this political objective. The political objective that we have is to take control of our lives. And then in so doing, when we deal with the issues of police, etc., part of how we're dealing with the police question, as quiet as it's kept, is that we're removing the mask of state-based oppression that's called crime and what have you, by engaging, having African people an opportunity to engage in actual productive work, production inside the African community for its own interests. And it begins to eliminate the pretext that the state uses, the colonial state uses to intervene in our communities. It takes so much of the crisis out of the existence of the colonized, of the oppressed. It creates a vision where people can see a future that does not rely on this competition among each other for resources and things like that. There's a collective will that's being created to achieve, to build our own future, to be self-determining. And so part of what we've also done in terms of, so that's one aspect. I think I cannot overstate that. People, a community that's growing its own food, that's building its own houses, that's doing all this other kind of stuff, and what that means to change the very character of the community and uniting that community, as opposed to how fractured a community is when it's being victimized by this parasitic relationship that's not easily understood by the community in terms of how to fight back. There is no blueprint. Now there's a blueprint of how to fight back, and it's called a Black Power blueprint. And then part of what this blueprint calls for too is the ongoing process of taking power in our own hands, and that's critical aspect of that is this organ of the state that's called the police. And the police is a vicious entity. It is, it's hard really to overstate the callous, brutal, ignominious role that's played by the police among colonized populations, among the Africans in this country. And so part of the struggle that we're involved in, especially in the face of what's becoming clearer and clearer to everybody, that the police function as an occupying military force inside the African colony is to raise up the whole democratic question of African people being in control of the police in our community. And that takes us a step toward self-determination. It is a struggle against a foreign, hostile, colonial state apparatus that's there for the purpose of oppressing us and saying that the community can take control of this, can first of all get it out, and then create our own capacity for policing our communities, which is the capture of political power or movement toward the direction of capturing state power. And that's what it's about. And the greatest democratic struggle that colonized people can be involved in is the struggle to effect the ability of the colonial state to impose its will on the people. And so the struggle for Black community control of the police, that's a critical kind of struggle that moves us towards self-determination and is a reflection of the unity, really, of the political and the economic struggle that we're involved in.
Yes, Chairman, that is so exciting. There's nothing like this happening in the whole world. This is not about a demonstration. This is not about a single issue. This is about transforming the lives of African people by destroying the colonizer, destroying the colonizing nation. And we have an interest as white people in seeing this happen, because white power is what oppresses white women. White power is what oppresses white LGBT people, white workers, and what is destroying the environment that we can see. Look at what's happening in Los Angeles right now. The whole city itself is burning down. If you've seen those pictures, I mean, this is because a system that would destroy humanity, that would commit genocide, that would enslave a whole continent of human beings, of course destroys the earth. There's only one answer for us as white people: to jump off the pedestal and jump into our role under the leadership as an organization of the African People's Socialist Party, going into the heart of imperialism, where it's our responsibility to go into white power, win as many other white people just like ourselves, and say, we hate this life. We hate this life. And, you know, if you are saying that you want to be part of the future, you want to be part, you want to rectify your relationship to African people, the people on the planet Earth, and be part of the movement, the growing movement for reparations to African people, go now to youcaring.com/Black Power Blueprint and give today, give your reparations today, give $100 today, or anything that you can. Give $3,000 today if you can. Go ahead and give to this. This is going, and I want to say too, there are no administrative costs in this. This goes 100% to these projects. There's no not, you know, somehow, oh, it's going to take 60% because we have an office. No, this is all going to develop these programs in St. Louis. And, you know, we really appreciate everything you give today. And Chairman, I have another question for you. I saw a statistic that 51% of young white people say that they would rather live under socialism in a recent poll. And can you address that? Because obviously it can't be the Bernie Sanders socialism. It can't be white socialism. We have to understand what socialism means. I totally agree with it. I want to live under socialism, but it has to be what socialism really is, and not just something that makes changes the life of white people at the expense of everybody else.
I think that the thing that's driving people to consider socialism is not Bernie Sanders. I think it's capitalism. I think how capitalism is expressing itself in the world and in the people's lives. In people's lives, certainly, but how it expresses itself throughout the whole world. I mean, it contaminates everything that it touches, that it affects, and more people are becoming conscious of that. And as for what that socialism looks like, that's our responsibility to help people understand what socialism is. Because Bernie Sanders is a shield for capitalism, in the sense that he would give us an improved capitalism. He would, give us a process of where we improve imperialism, the imperialist system. And what it has to be uprooted, it has to be gotten rid of. It is a social system that is responsible for divisions among the peoples of the whole planet Earth. It's a blood-sucking system. Listen, I mean, to live in the United States and to have a population living in the United States and not even conscious, not even self-conscious about living on this territory where the traditional historical custodians are living in concentration camps called Indian reservations, and where most of the most significant productivity has happened from captive labor from enslaved people. I mean, that's a hell of a kind of society to be living in. Yes. You've got this, sort of collective and selective amnesia, about how this whole thing came into existence. And that's what we have a responsibility to teach people. This is not people say, well, you guilt tripping and what have you. This is political economy that we are talking about. It's political economy. How the hell did this whole thing get started? You got a bad relationship with so-called Indians. You feel sorry for the so-called Indians. They're in concentration camps. You're living on their land, and all the resources are being sucked up, and it's being done by those who have assumed custody of a social system that could not exist if this had not happened. That if it had not been for the enslaved labor of African people, it could not exist. And I'm telling you that the way out of capitalism is destroyed by the emancipation and liberation of the oppressed and colonized peoples of the world. That's the direction to socialism. That's why we say the road to socialism is painted black. And you can come home. You don't have to be trapped with the future of Donald Trump. You don't have to be trapped with the future of a dying social system, and it is dying. You see it every day, which is one of the reasons young people are talking about socialism, because they don't, the stench of death surrounds the whole capitalist system. And so it is our responsibility, and that's what we're doing with this event, and all the others that we're doing to educate people about how to get to socialism and what socialism really means. And socialism does not mean, whereas you have some benevolent capitalists who can give the workers maybe over a number of years $15 an hour when the workers are the ones who create all the damn value altogether. Yes. So that's what we have to understand. And we talk about a collective society. We're talking about something that almost automatically makes it offensive, against the worst habits that we have in our own personal lives, jealousy and other things like that. When people have everything that they need, when there is nothing separating people in terms of having resources, when it's available for everybody, there's no basis. The material basis, even for things like jealousy, is gone away. When you don't have the kinds of restrictions placed in society that feeds a capitalist system and its assumptions about the need for reproduction workers to to create value for white power, the relationships between men and women, and all of this stuff is something that can be shattered and transformed in the process of creating a real socialist kind of society. That's what it is that we're fighting for. And we can help people understand this, that there is no future with capitalism. There is no future with imperialism. In fact, we used to have a saying that capitalism and colonialism, you can live without them. Yeah.
Good, Chairman. Wow, I just want to thank Deputy Chair Onizine Yeshitela, gave $100. Johan Bedingfield gave $25 in reparations, and Sam McCormick gave 10.
All right.
So we are at $585. We are more than halfway to our goal this afternoon. And Chairman Omali Yeshitela, I wish you could stay for hours. I know you are very, very, very busy. And I just thank you so much for coming on. And what kind of discussion, do we have anywhere in the world like this? This tells you the truth. It is like it takes the stress off your shoulders, because we're looking at a world that is one at the expense of something else, and nothing is as it is said. We're told that we're supposed to be happy, we have the best civilization, but we are responsible for rape and murder and pillage. And we have carried that out ourselves, that we're supposed to be the good, the Christian, all of these lies. And to hear African internationalism, to hear you speak, Chairman, it just gives us the ability to see the world as it really is through the eyes of the African working class. And I appreciate that so much, and everything that you have discussed today.
I want to thank you. And I'd just like to say these final things, that people who really want to fight for a decent future, for a real future, you can see that future in the African People's Socialist Party. That we talk about Black Power blueprint. I think it's really important to say that this is a project that's being led by an African woman, and that working in the city of St. Louis, where the mass political work that's happening there is led by an African woman. We're talking about an organization that where you see young people who are responsible for credible parts of this work, leadership. Young people, I think right now, we've got one of the youngest people in the work out of St. Louis. I think she's 14. We have an incredible young leader here in St. Petersburg, Florida, who's 15. You look at our party, you see that there is no wall that's developed around, question of gender-based power politics. There is no political, this whole oppression of homosexuality. You see people who are obviously homosexual who lead in this movement, who attack this political homosexuality, that make that the fundamental question, as opposed to the emancipation of the African nation, the African working class, and what have you. There's just so much there. And then the relationship that the party has with the forces who are part of the Uhuru movement, Uhuru Solidarity, the African People's Solidarity Committee. I'm saying, here's the future. You're looking at the future. You're staring right at it. And it's the kind of future that everybody says that they want. Where there are no longer these walls and barriers between people. We are eliminating the basis for these contradictions among the people. And our party is the only party that I know where you see this kind of leadership with women. And I mentioned the question, people who identified as homosexual, because I know about the kind of oppression and this specialized political homosexuality that's out there that would make the homosexuality the critical question, as opposed to what side of history they stand on, what's their class stance, what's their opposition to imperialism, colonialism, and things like that. And then the relationship that exists between the party and the Uhuru Solidarity movement. That's the future. And that people who want to support a future like this then should do everything they can to make Black Power blueprint successful in this project that economic development and dual power that we are involved in working with right now. So I want to thank you and thank everybody who has contributed up to now. And I hope that, what do they call it? Donor fatigue.
Donor fatigue, no, such a thing, because it's not donor fatigue,
well,
it's reparation.
Exactly, the donor fatigue is what I'm suffering from. So, yeah, so.
I do want to join in just saluting Deputy Chair Onus and Yeshitela, and who has led these projects in St. Louis and all of the economic projects of the African People's Socialist Party all around the country and world, and has just done an amazing job in St. Louis, just building dual power, getting these, just every possible way. The city had some buildings that were very inexpensive to get, but other kinds of things, and leading this program to just like make the Uhuru House, which was almost falling down, a most beautiful building. It's already got the spotlights coming in. If people saw the video from this morning, the Uhuru House has already transformed since then. We have spotlights in, very beautiful, a stage, the whole floor is in on the first floor. It is going to be so gorgeous. It already is, and we need these resources to be able to go ahead and get this finished with all of the African workers who are working on it, and to also be able to demolish the buildings across the street, which are going to be, that land is going to be the One Africa, One Nation marketplace and a community garden. So, we just really want to salute Deputy Chair Onus and Yeshitela, and thank you again for putting in $100 today. And, just want to thank the chairman and say, I am, the chair of the African People's Solidarity Committee, which is the organization of the African People's Socialist Party for white people. So if you are moved by what you hear today, not only pay the reparations, but seriously take a look at joining the Uhuru Solidarity Movement and the African People's Solidarity Committee to be able to be part of this vision that the chairman is talking about, that it makes you love life. It makes you want to be anything that you can do to go out there and do it, to forward this program, the exuberance, the beauty, and the brilliance of the African working class is so incredible, and to see it leading and taking power and building an economy and a government is so beautiful to see, and it brings you back to the African Revolution of Haiti, the first revolutionary government in the entire world, led by enslaved African people against the largest, the biggest army of imperialism at that time, the army of Napoleon. Just the humanity of that, that offered the ability for oppressed people anywhere in the world. That's what the African People's Socialist Party represents. It represents the connection with oppressed people everywhere. So, Jackson.
Uhuru, as the chairwoman Penny said, I am also a member of the African People's Solidarity Committee and its master organization, the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. You can please come to our You Caring page for the Black Power Blueprint, led by Deputy Chair Onizime Yeshitela of Black Power Blueprint of Black Star Industries, which together with APDF is leading the Black Power Blueprint campaign, Deputy Chair of the African People's Socialist Party. And you can go to ucaring.com/Black Power Blueprint. Donate, pay reparations today, right now. It's Friday, payday. So whatever you can, $100, $1,000, $5.
It's all good.
It's all good. Whatever you can do to contribute to, as the chairman said, this revolutionary process that is being built, this revolution being built in St. Louis, where the Black community is under attack daily, severe gentrification. There are low housing prices, so that young white people can come in and push out the Black community. And like it or not, we as white people are part of this oppressor nation, and we can take a stand against gentrification, against oppression, against capitalism, for true socialism, for Black power, under the leadership of the African Revolution. So please, ucaring.com/Black Power Blueprint. You can join the African People's Solidarity Committee, APSC, UHRU.com, Uhuru Solidarity Movement, UhuruSolidarity.org, and comment below. Share this video, share this powerful interview, watch it later, share with your friends, tag people, message it, invite people, share it to the groups you're in on Facebook, share it to the groups you're not in on Facebook, all of the pages, share on Instagram, on Twitter, Tumblr, whatever you're on, and get this out there, forward this revolutionary process.
Uhuru, Jackson, really appreciate that. Chairman, we're not going off the air right now. We're going to be on for a while because we want to continue to talk to you, but I know that you are very, very busy. So I want to, wow, we have another $100 from Pamela Paris. So, I think we met you, Pamela, in Gainesville,
yes.
In solidarity with African people. Really, really powerful. Really appreciate your reparations today. And that puts us at $685. So we're getting close to our goal. And Chairman Omali, Yeshitela, I know you were very, very busy, and just really appreciate you being here today. And it just was an amazing discussion. So I want to thank you very, very much for coming on, and salute you and say Uhuru.
Uhuru.
And the chairman always says, Iswele too. And for us as white people, instead of saying Iswele too, we say Iswele nu, which means Africa is your land.
Wow.
So Iswele nu,
Africa.
Uhuru. Thank you so much. Thank you, comrades. And thank you, Uhuru.
Uhuru. So we're going to stay on a little bit longer because we have some more resources to raise, and we know that at 4 o'clock this afternoon, 3 o'clock Central Time, 3 o'clock Central Time, 4 o'clock Eastern, will be another of the live streams straight from on site in Philadelphia from the Uhuru House, where it is very, very cold today. It's freezing out there today. We're in Florida. And wow, Casey Mackey, Uhuru, another $100. $785. We're almost going to be up to our matching fund of $1,000 from our fabulous comrade Ruby Gittleson out there in Philadelphia today. We're almost there, so that we're going to double it. So when you're giving right now, you're doubling what you're giving. You're doubling what you're giving. So we're going to be here. This is real reparations to African people. And you know, we just want to really try to go ahead and make our $1,000. We're going to be on 2 more times today. And, you know, if we can go ahead and make $1,000 each segment plus our matching fund, we'll make $4,000 towards the $25,000 that we're trying to do. You know, we want to get done with this really fast. This youth hearing site is up through the end of February, but $25,000 is nothing. Is absolutely nothing. So, we have $15 from Star out in St. Louis, and that puts us at $800.
$800, 200 more.
200 more, and we'll meet our matching funds. Fantastic. So I'm very, very proud of you and everybody that's, that's going to be. We're also going to be on tonight at 7 o'clock Eastern.
So that's 6 p.m. Central, of course. At 4 p.m. Pacific. So share with whatever coast your friends are on. Share with your West Coast friends, East Coast friends, your friends in the UK, your friends, wherever they are in the world. Everyone can give to this. And as we said, everyone can give to this and be a part of this revolutionary process. We are making a special call to white people, as representatives of the Black Power Blueprint Reparations campaign. So please, call your rich uncles, your family, and get this word out, because you see what is being built here. You see real Black power before your eyes, real socialism being built. And as the chairman said, revolution is a process. And when it's being built in St. Louis, has repercussions all around the world for African people and for all people. And as Chairman Penny said, as the chairman said, this system that marginalizes even white people, white women, white LGBT people, white disabled people, all these different sectors. This system is built at the expense of African people, of indigenous people, of colonized people all around the world. And ongoing oppression, ongoing slavery and genocide, concentration camps called reservations for the indigenous population, prisons where the majority of the population is African or indigenous, and the absolute violence of gentrification that so many of us, are just a part of going through life, going to the coffee shop that's a few streets away, trying to find a place to live, going to see a movie, or meeting up with someone for tea at a local shop. We're automatically a part of the system, whether we like to be or not. But we can take a stand, and we can join in to building a collective, a beautiful world where no one lives at anyone's expense, where there isn't oppressor and oppressed.
Jackson, I really appreciate what you're saying. I just wanted to read some of the comments from some of the people who have put in resources today. We're at $800. We're almost to our matching fund from Howard Ruby Gibbleson. So everything you're putting in now, the next $200, you're doubling. If anybody can just go ahead and put this $200 in, then we would be done. But from DC Ona, from Deputy Chair Ona Sine Yeshitela, who gave $100, who's also the coordinator of the programs in St. Louis. So it's very powerful. And she wrote, the Black Power Blueprint is about the people taking complete control of their communities and becoming a self-determining and self-reliant people who won't stop till we win. We also have from Comrade Ann Hirsch, our resident movement midwife, who we just love. It's a member of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement and Cured. And Ann said, wow, this dynamic project is so inspiring. What better place to send our reparations so that the African community can develop their own economic, social, political power. Returning what has been stolen. Now is the time. And from Comrade Allison Haney in Philadelphia, who says Black Power Blueprint is an inspiring dual power program, building real self-determination to the African community. This donation is part of the reparations we owe as white people to African people, and for building a liberated future for all humanity. $100. Wow, that's beautiful, beautiful. I just love what people write and what they contribute. And I just feel so it's so powerful what the chairman was saying. This whole question of dual contending power. We have, I have my shirt on today that says the road to socialism is being run, right? And this was put out by Planet of Blue, which is one of the institutions of Black Star Industries. And this whole reality that there's no socialism for white people. What does that mean? That we would have socialist colonialism? That we would still sit on the pedestal of the oppression of African people and stolen land, and with colonized people all over the world? This is not socialism. As the chairman said, the only basis for socialism is for imperialism to be destroyed and for African people to have the land of Africa, to have their continent and all their resources returned to them. Because this system of capitalism was built on the assault on Africa, on the turning of African human beings into commodities for sale and working African people to death for basically 600 years in this chattel slavery that built the wealth of imperialism and the United States that we know today. And there could be no socialism on the land of the Americas until indigenous people have their land back. So this is really key, that socialism will be led by the African working class, by the indigenous people, by oppressed and colonized peoples around the world.
Exactly.
So if you want to be part of socialism, and I do, I want to be part of this. This is where everybody can be part of society under the leadership of the African working class, where the whole world is, where African people will be able to control and basically determine their own future, their own culture, in which all human beings can live and contribute to society, be part of it, and benefit from what they need, not all of this consumerism that we're faced with, not this, all the things that keep up with the Joneses and whatever, and buying all these expensive things all the time, and, our mortgage on our house. I mean, in Cuba, which is a socialist kind of society, but it can't be socialism until parasitic capitalism is destroyed. But they've had a socialist experiment there. In Cuba, people pay 4% of their income on rent. 4%. But you only you just make a little bit, but food and all of your needs are there, and they have more doctors per capita in Cuba than any other country in the world, far more than inside the United States. So this is the world that we want to be part of. Wow. David Fabreau gave $25 today. Wow. Thank you, David. But this leaves us with only $175 to go to match our matching fund from Ruby Gittleson in Philadelphia today, $1,000. Remember, the $25 you just gave, David, is doubled today in this morning session. So we just want to go ahead and get that $175, and we will have made our goal for this morning session. And, just a principled stand. I just want to say, too, that when we say that we owe reparations as white people, we're not only talking about the resources that we've had, the social wealth that has enabled our families to have property and houses and all kinds of things passed down from generation to generation, that's given us the ability to get a new mortgage on a house, or be able to go to college and everything. That it's not only given us the highest standard of living of any people inside, in the world, as white people here and in Europe, but also there's the reality that we owe reparations for the terror that we have inflicted ourselves on African people, on the lynchings, on the terror, the rape and murder. Anybody who has seen the pictures that you can see on the internet of just regular white people, not ruling class, not the military, not even the Ku Klux Klan, just white people standing around laughing as African people are being burnt, are being hanged to death, and just horrible pictures, even posing little white children, little girls with pinafores and bows in their hands in front of the bodies, the lifeless bodies of African people who have been murdered. We did that. We did that. And we owe reparations for that. The pain and suffering, what number could even be given to that? I mean, we're talking about the stolen labor alone is equal to the gross domestic product of the United States in a year, and that's minimally from the time of enslavement alone inside the United States. But the terror, the murder, the slaughter, and our participation in the genocide of indigenous people, how much would that be worth? How can you even quantify that in terms of what we owe in reparations for that? So it's like everything in this system has to go back. It has to go back. It has to go back to African people. It has to go back to indigenous people. I mean, it makes sense. It makes sense. There's no reforming this system. It was born this way. This is in the DNA of what capitalism is. It was born parasitic. It's a bloodsucker. It's a tapeworm. As the chairman always says, that sucks the blood of people on the planet Earth for us, for our benefit. And that's why we're sick. That's why we're unhappy. That's why we get addicted to drugs and alcohol, even addicted to our cell phones, and Facebook instead of real human beings, because we have separated ourselves. We have voluntarily isolated ourselves from everybody else on the planet Earth. And that this supporting real dual and containing power, real self-government in the hands of the African working class, as the chairman said, not in a vague or fake way, but in a real way that people can. Wow, $25 from Kitty Riley. Wow, Kitty Riley, who's comrade from the African People's Solidarity Committee, who along with Casey Mackey is going to be on at 4 o'clock Eastern, 3 o'clock Central, with African People's Socialist Party member Tajarwa Masimba on site in St. Louis, where it's freezing cold today, but they're going to go out there, it's real cadre, and go into the building and show you how beautiful it is, how amazing, and really lay out all the things. The HVAC is needed, the plumbing is needed, the interior design is needed, the sheetrocking, the painting, all of this. And they're going to talk to you all about that, what it's going to take. This is a 3-story building. It is a beautiful, beautiful building here in the O'Fallon neighborhood of St. Louis. And, I just wanted to say, too, that in the earlier than the 1960s, St. Louis was a huge city. It had a population of 850,000. But after the Black Power movement of the 1960s, 3/4 of the population of St. Louis left the city, white flight, going to the suburbs. And the population of St. Louis was left as this impoverished African community. Now, today, African people make up 50% of the population of St. Louis, but there's something called the Del Mar Divide. When you go north of Del Mar Avenue, you see poverty, you see burnt out buildings, you see buildings that haven't been inhabited since the 1970s. And this is where the Black Power blueprint is taking place and rebuilding that, because St. Louis, just like every place else around the country, is attempting to gentrify. It's attempting to gentrify the city, bring white people in and drive out the African community, which we see here in St. Petersburg and certainly in Oakland, of course in New York, and so many other places, Boston, San Diego, everywhere where they're driving the African community out. So this is something that is going to reverse the legacy of genocide and gentrification in St. Louis. It's going to rebuild and re-strengthen the African community and make it a vital economy. So it's really, really a beautiful project that we can support and we can give. So, we're calling on people from the North American population. Go ahead, give your reparations today. Go ahead and put it in youcaring.com/Black Power Blueprint.
175, we need to reach our goal of another $1,000, which is being matched by Ruby Gittleson in Philadelphia. So really want to salute Ruby. And $175. So many white people spend that on a shopping spree with their friend or with their mom. Going to
People spend it going out to dinner with a couple bottles of wine.
Going out to dinner, a couple of bottles of wine, tiramisu, all these things that we just, it's just life. It's just we do it without thinking. And this goes to a revolutionary program, to real material Black power, to strengthening this community, and we owe reparations. And these reparations go to building the beautiful collective world that Chairman Omali Yeshitela was just talking about. So please, go to youcaring.com/Black Power Blueprint. Share in this video, and on Instagram, on Twitter. Share it to everyone. We really need to spread this message. You heard this powerful interview with Chairman Omali Yeshitela. You've heard the powerful words of Chairwoman Hess of the African People's Solidarity Committee. And don't you want other people to hear this? And I remember that Comrade Casey Mackey from the African People's Solidarity Committee, who will be going live in St. Louis later today, said at the Who Solidarity Movement convention, don't you want to live in that world? Don't you want to fight for that world? I want to fight for that world.
Yes.
And so, this is part of building that. And Huru means freedom in Swahili. It is a Black Power slogan from the 60s, taken from the Mau Mau's resistance in Kenya to British colonialism. And so Huru means freedom. And in the Huru movement, we say it all the time to keep freedom on our minds, because there is no real freedom, certainly not for African people, under this parasitic, capitalist, blood-sucking imperialist system that was built at their expense, that was built off slavery and genocide, and is maintained by it today in St. Louis, in Oakland, in St. Petersburg, Florida, Tampa, New York, everywhere, and in Europe, in London, and Paris, and in Australia, and New Zealand. There's gentrification and police violence, everywhere, wherever African people are on the continent of Africa. And as the chairman said earlier, and what Chairman Penny said earlier, in the movement, the African People's Socialist Party says Israeli to the Africa, which for them means Africa is our land, and we say in the Solidarity Movement, Israeli new Africa, Africa is your land.
Right. And
all the coffee stolen from Ethiopia, and the crystals and jewelry taken from Tanzania and Mozambique, the diamonds and the Labradorite, and all of these things that, oh, that's a nice necklace, or I'll just get a cup of coffee. And it's all stolen, and it's but we can be a part of building a world where we don't live at anyone's expense, and where we can live in this beautiful collective society where everyone is thriving.
After we pay our
reparations, which again, youcaring.com/Black Power Blueprint. Go there now and pay your reparations.
So I know, we have with us today, actually behind the scenes here, Comrade Kyle, who is coordinating the and Comrade Renee, who has been collecting all of your donations and adding them up for us today. And Comrade Jesse, who's been looking at the chat, etc. So I was just wondering if you can give us a sense of our reach today, our view today.
We've reached almost 6,000 people so far.
All right.
Excellent.
247.
Oh, so we're able to share now.
247.
We had some little glitches this morning if you were trying to share the video. Well, we're talking about this.
Yeah, for the live stream.
Yeah, the share.
And our beautiful video that just want to salute Comrade Kyle for making that video that's on the HTML emails today that we're sharing as well. Please go see that. It talks about the projects and why it has to happen We weren't able to share that a little bit earlier, thanks to problems with Facebook, but that is being able to be shared now. And how many times has this video been shared today?
250.
250. Yes, that's great.
Not too far to go.
Oh, we want to get to 500. That's a goal. Good. Yeah, we do.
And yeah, so the video that Chairman Penny mentioned that Kyle made, that is a beautiful, beautiful video showing the development taking place in St. Louis under the leadership of the Deputy Chair Yeshitela of the African People's Socialist Party and Black Star Industries. You can see that video on the Youth Hearing site. The link to that is in the description of this video. You can watch that video, share it, and really see the institutions, the Uhuru House Community Center, the marketplace, and the community gardens, Uhuru Jiko Kitchen, Commercial Kitchen, African Independence Workforce Program, all of these institutions and organizations being built under the leadership of the African Revolution.
Uhuru, and we're only going to be on 15 more or 10 more minutes in this segment here. So we just really want, we can raise this. We need $175. Come on, just give it up. Just give it up. This is people have given generously this morning, and we really, really appreciate that. We just need 175 more. We've got to make our goals. We're only raising in all over 3 months $25,000. I mean, that is what some people make in this country. How many make a month? That's an income for a month for many people. And we just, we can get this. We have social wealth. We have access to the resources, and we need to turn it back over. A little bit later, we're going to see some of the conditions that exist in St. Louis, in the African community, where Deputy Chair Yeshitela, Kitty Riley from the African People's Solidarity Committee, who's been working directly under Deputy Chair Yeshitela for the last several months, helping to make these projects happen. Very powerful. Casey Mackey is out there, Comrade Star is out in St. Louis, working in the white community to organize others just like ourselves to jump on board this powerful movement and to be part of an organization of the African People's Socialist Party, building the world that you're talking about, Jackson. So we just need a few more people to put in some resources today, and we'll be able to make our goal of $1,000 and we'll be happy for matching funds. So, one of the ways that that the Uhuru movement was built in St. Louis was that after the police murder of Mike Brown in Ferguson, which is basically a suburb of St. Louis, in 2014 on August 9th, there were rebellions, powerful rebellions from the community there. And Chairman Omali of the African People's Socialist Party went maybe about 10 days later, when a lot of demonstrations and all kinds of actions were still going on. He went on the ground in St. Louis and began live streaming and summing up right there during demonstrations. And President Kalambai Andanet of the International People's Democratic Movement, who grew up in St. Louis, saw the chairman and started following him. I want to hear what he has to say. Saw him being live streamed and was really moved by the message, the analysis that the chairman was giving, that nobody else was giving, and the struggles. And today, President Kalambai is the president of the International People's Democratic Movement, and the headquarters is there in St. Louis. And she is going to be on later this evening, 7 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock in, or is it, 7 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock in Central in St. Louis. So, it would be a tremendous opportunity to be able to hear her talk about growing up in St. Louis and how she got involved and how she sees this Black Power blueprint and the International People's Democratic Movement transforming the conditions of African people there in St. Louis. So it's going to be really, really powerful to see her and Secretary General Ghazi Koto, who's going to be on the same segment tonight. So next coming up is going to be directly from St. Louis, and it's going to be African People's Socialist Party member Gicharo Masimba. Powerful, and you've probably seen some of his videos if you're following Black Power Blueprint. He just did one, I think, yesterday or 2 days ago. Really powerful, talking about the projects that are going on there. And we're also going to have Kitty Riley, who is part of the leadership of the African People's Solidarity Committee, and who is over the Office of Reparations and Economic Development, directly under Deputy Chair Omali Yeshitela's office. And we also will have Casey Mackey, who is the coordinator, organizer of the African People's Solidarity Committee there in St. Louis. And it's going to be powerful to see. So we want to call on everybody to tune back in at 4 p.m. Eastern today and 3 p.m. out in St. Louis, or 1 p.m. on the West Coast. Yeah, we don't want to forget you. Definitely come on.
Yes.
Out on the West Coast today. So we want to thank you all, everybody who's given today. This is really powerful. We have gotten to $825. We need $175 more that we know for sure will be raised in the next segment. We want to thank everybody who gave today and your beautiful messages for taking a stand for reparations to African people and supporting self-government, political and economic power in the hands of African people in this project, specifically in St. Louis, Missouri. Uhuru!
Uhuru!
Unity through
reparations!
Uhuru!
Uhuru!